What is up, YouTube? This is 82 and 0. Welcome back. Eid Mubarak to everyone out there that celebrates Eid. I hope you're having a wonderful Eid with your family. So, for this video, I kind of want to touch on Muslim NBA players. Now, when I initially started this list, I found it kind of hard to find a complete list of all the Muslim NBA players in history. And other ones, the details weren't quite as open, like players who had Muslim names but never actually publicly admitted to being Muslim. So I thought it'd be fun to make a list just covering a few Muslim NBA players and their stories. So I hope you guys enjoy. Eid Mubarak. So, Kareem Abdul Jabbar. Now, he was originally born Lou Al Cinder. He was born into a Catholic family. But as we all know, at the age of 24 in 1971, he publicly announced that he converted to Islam and changed his name to Kareem Abdul Jabbar, which means Noble One, Servant of the Almighty. Now, what I've read is that's not when he became Muslim, that's when he became public with his conversion. So, from what I read it was actually around 1968 that he made that decision to become Muslim, and he rejected the Nation of Islam movement, which is not actually a mainstream Muslim movement. Now, Abdul Jabbar has spoken about this. The reason why about his name change and why he converted to Islam, he stated that he was latching on to something that was part of his heritage, because many of the slaves who were brought to America were Muslims before being forced to convert to Christianity. My family was brought to America by a French planter named Alcindor, who came here from Trinidad in the 18th century. My people were Yoruba, and their culture survived slavery. My father found out about it when I was a kid, and it gave me all I needed to know that. So, I was somebody even if nobody knew about it. When I was a kid, no one would believe anything positive that you could say about black people. And that's a terrible burden on black people because they don't have an accurate idea of their history, which has been either suppressed or distorted. His name change further eroded the public image in the United States, mostly in white areas. And it's funny, there was a Miami Dolphins player who converted to Islam back in the 90s who changed his name to Abdul Kareem Al Jabbar. Pretty similar, which he attributed it to being inspired by Kareem Abdul Jabbar. And Kareem, one thing that I find is really interesting about his story is in those off seasons, in the early days with the Milwaukee Bucks, he would make trips to Saudi Arabia and study Arabic and study Quran. And I've heard that Kareem Abdul Jabbar has actually got most of the Quran memorized. So that's Kareem's story. And next we have Mahmoud Abdul Rauf. Now, he was originally born Chris Jackson. Now, many people probably haven't heard of him like Kareem Abdul Jabbar. He was born in Mississippi, and he went to high school in Gulfport, Mississippi, and then he would attend college at LSU from 1988 to 1990. And it was in college where he started studying the Quran because one of his coaches gave him the autobiography of Malcolm X, and he read the Quran, where he decided to become Muslim. Now, it wasn't until 1991 where he converted and changed his name to Mahmoud Abdul Rauf, but it would be in 1993 when he would change the name. Now, his father was a big influence in his life and also helped him with his conversion because his father had become Muslim. Now, he might be more well known for his national anthem controversy than his actual playing. Now, in the 1990s, on March 12, 1996, he was suspended for his refusal to stand for the national anthem, and he was fined $31,000 per missed game. So, some people consider this a publicity stunt. Well, Mahmoud Abdul Rauf, the reason why he protested the national anthem was he cited that he couldn't stand for oppression. And he during the time he was kind of protesting the US involvement in all these other different countries. Like for example, they had bases in Iraq, they had bases in Saudi Arabia. He looked at it as tyranny. And so he protested the anthem. And he would kind of be an inspiration for Colin Kaepernick many years later. And he would kind of become blackballed out of the NBA, kind of like how Colin Kaepernick was blackballed. But a lot of people forget how good of a player he actually was. I'm not saying he was like a perennial all-star or a Hall of Famer, but his career high points per game was 19.2 points per game. He had a career high assist of 6.8 assists per game. But what I think made the player really interesting was how good of a three-point shooter he was. Like to give you an example, and I know that three-point shooting in that era, they didn't take as many, but he was shooting 39% from three-point line on 5 attempts per game. And what I think his team was best remembered for was the 1994 Denver Nuggets that upset the Seattle Supersonics. Now, the Seattle Supersonics were heavily, heavily favored to win the series. They were a 63-win team, and the 1994 Denver Nuggets were a 42-win team. But Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf and Dikembe Mutombo were the two best players on that team, and they upset them in 5 games. So that's Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf's story. And currently, he what he did outside of basketball, I know he was playing in the Big 3 league for a while. I haven't really heard what he's done off the court since then. I know he tried coaching for a little while. And he did have an international career too. He played in Turkey for a while. He played over in Japan for a while up until 2011. And right now, I think he's still in the Big 3 league. If somebody wants to correct me if I'm wrong, let me know. So that's Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. So next on my list, I have Shareef Abdur-Rahim. Now, a lot of people, probably my age and older, remember him. So he was one of the Vancouver Grizzlies' first draft picks. He played there from 1996 to 2001. He also played with the Atlanta Hawks, the Portland Trailblazers, and the Sacramento Kings, which he was actually an assistant coach for. And he was an all-star in 2002. He grew up in a Muslim family. He's actually a very devout Muslim. He observed Ramadan in the NBA, and his name translates to, which Abdur-Rahim actually means noble. And his last name means servant. So his last name, servant of the most merciful. That's what his name means. And his parents were very devout Muslims. And growing up, he had a very strong family. His father was very active in his life in terms of getting him to play basketball, going to all of his games. And Abdur-Rahim later attended college at the University of California in Berkeley, where he maintained a GPA of 3.5. And at California, he averaged 21.1 points per game, 8.4 rebounds per game. And he was the 3rd overall pick by the Vancouver Grizzlies behind Allen Iverson and Marcus Camby in that famous 1996 draft. What I remember him most for, actually, I didn't grow up in the 90s, but I remember him on the Atlanta Hawks being an all-star in 2002, putting up 21.2 points per game, 9.0 rebounds per game, 3.1 assists per game, 1.3 steals per game, 1.1 blocks per game. And I always remember him as being this underrated power forward in the 2000s, kind of lost in the mix of all the great power forwards of that era. So that's Shareef Abdur-Rahim. But he was pretty active off the court. So, like I mentioned, he was a coach for the Sacramento Kings for a while. But he also tried being a general manager there, assistant general manager, I should say. And he also, on August 29, 2013, Abdul Rahim was named the new general manager of the Reno Bighorns, which is like a G League team. And on December 11, 2018, Abdul Rahim was named the president of the NBA G League and replaced Malcolm Turner, who stepped down on January 11, 2019, to become the athletic director of Vanderbilt University. So he's currently still the NBA G League president of operations. So that's pretty cool. So that's Abdul Rahim's story. Next on this list, I have Larry Grandmama Johnson. Now, he was one of my favorite 90s players. He came in, drafted in 1991, played with the Charlotte Hornets up into the 95-96 season before being traded to the New York Knicks. Well, on the Knicks, he had a very crazy playoff run. Now, the 1999 Knicks, despite not having Patrick Ewing, because he was hurt, they made it all the way to the NBA Finals, where they upset the Indiana Pacers, the Hawks, and the Heat. Now, it was actually in the Game 3 of the Eastern Conference Finals where Larry Johnson hit a crazy 4-point play. What I mean by that is he was fouled in the last seconds of the game taking a three-pointer. So his three tied it 91-91, and his free throw put him up 92-91, and they won the game. And in the after-game interview where he was asked about this, where they interviewed him about his crazy 4-point play, he said, "All praise to Allah." And that's actually how I found out he was Muslim. I never knew he was Muslim until that moment. And he didn't have a very long career because of back injuries, but when he came in, there was a lot of hype around him on the Hornets. He was an all-star his second year. He put up 22.1 points per game, 10.5 rebounds per game, 4.3 assists. And his final season would be in 2000-2001 with the Knicks, where he was just 31 years old. His career was pretty short. He's a two-time all-star, 1992 Rookie of the Year. And that's Larry Johnson. And next on my list, I have Shaquille O'Neal. Now, Shaq was born to although he didn't grow up with his biological father, his stepfather is who he considers to be his dad. And his stepfather was a Muslim, and he raised Shaquille O'Neal as a Muslim. And that's what, to my knowledge, Shaquille O'Neal identifies as, everything I've heard him say. And Shaquille is actually a Muslim name. A lot of people don't know that. So Shaquille O'Neal, he's a Hall of Famer. I think most people know who Shaquille O'Neal is. He's a Hall of Famer. He came into the league and played for the Orlando Magic before signing with the Los Angeles Lakers. And it was on the Lakers where he'd win 3 championships from 2000 to 2002. And he would later be traded to the Miami Heat, where he would win a championship with them in 2006. And he would kind of bounce around the league for a while. He played, with the Suns. He played with the Cavs. He played with the Celtics. And, he's probably the greatest center of the early 2000s. And he's the most dominant player of that generation in the early 2000s. Every kid I grew up in the early 2000s. Every kid in that generation, loved Shaq. And today he's a very successful businessman. He owns, all these endorsement deals. You see him on The General, you see him on Icy Hot. He's a very generous guy. You'll hear all these stories about Shaq's generosity, whether it be donating $70,000 to the victims of the Buffalo mass shooting, their families. You hear stories about him going to a restaurant and tipping someone thousands of dollars. And he owns 155 Five Guys, 17 Auntie Annie's pretzel shops, 150 car washes, 40 24-hour fitness centers, and a shopping mall and a movie theater in Las Vegas. And he makes $22 million a year from his endorsements, which I mentioned earlier. Plus, he's on TNT, where he's a commentator or not a commentator, uh, uh, personality, if you want to call it that. But I always enjoy him and Charles Barkley's chemistry on the show. They have a great chemistry. Shaquille O'Neal is a very funny guy. He's also been in a lot of movies. I can't say some of his movies were the best. He starred in Steel, which is a 1997 movie where he played the DC comic character Steel. And I think DC is really embarrassed by this movie because although DC's movies are all pretty much on HBO Max, Steel is not on there. It's a pretty bad movie. Another movie he was in was Kazam. And he's been in a few other ones. He's a 15-time All-Star, 2-time scoring champ, 4-time NBA champion, 14-time All-NBA, 1993 All-Rookie, 1993 Rookie of the Year, 3-time All-Defense, 3-time All-Star Game MVP, 3-time Finals MVP, the 2000 MVP, and he's on the NBA 75th and 50th anniversary team. That's Shaquille O'Neal. And for anyone who didn't know, the name Shaquille means handsome in Arabic. And coming up on my list next, I have Hakeem the Dream Olajuwon. Now, Hakeem, he was actually born a Muslim, but his name was spelled Akeem, which he would change in 1990 to Hakeem Olajuwon. And, he's a member of the Yoruba tribe in Nigeria. I'm sorry if I butchered that to anyone. I don't mean to offend. And that's kind of funny because Kareem is descended from that tribe, through the transatlantic slave trade. So he grew up in Lagos, Nigeria, and he went to high school at Muslim Teachers College in Lagos, Nigeria. Before going to college, he got a scholarship in Houston from 81 to 84 before being the first pick in the draft by the Houston Rockets. Crazy how he was in the city of Houston, for so long, whether it be college or the pros. But when he first came into the league, a lot of people don't know this, he wasn't really serious about his faith. He would get in a lot of fights. He was short-tempered. He didn't get along with his teammates very much. And after his rookie year, he signed a 5-year agreement for $2.5 million. And he actually had a signature shoe line called the Dream Shoe. But the reason why he got rid of his shoes is because he heard a story where somebody was killed over a pair of his shoes. And he didn't want to be attributed to that. So he got out of that sneaker business. And in Olajuwon's college career in early years, like in the NBA, like I said, he didn't really take his faith serious. And it wasn't until 1991 where he changed his name to Hakeem, and became a more devout Muslim. And he didn't say he was changing the spelling of his name. He said, I'm correcting it. He later recalled, I studied the Quran every day at home and at the mosque. I would read it on airplanes before games and after them. I was soaking up the faith and learning new meanings each time I turned a page. I didn't dabble in the faith. I gave myself over to it. His religion dominates his life, Drexler said in 1995. Olajuwon was still recognized as one of the league's elite centers despite his strict observance of Ramadan. And he won the 1995 NBA Finals during Ramadan. And Olajuwon played for 20 consecutive seasons in Houston, whether it be college and pros, like I said. But after the NBA, he got into real estate. And he has a real estate company which generates over $100 million. He buys in cash-only purchases, as it is against Islamic law to pay interest. Olajuwon splits his time between Jordan, where he moved with his family to purchase Islamic studies, and his ranch near Houston. In 2006 NBA offseason, Olajuwon opened his first big man camp where he teaches young front court players the finer points of play while playing in the post. Now, I would say he has the greatest footwork of any center, and I think that comes from his soccer playing days. When he was in Nigeria, he originally wanted to play soccer. And if you look at his dream shake, all these post moves he had, he moved like a guard. He was pretty incredible. Won 2 championships with the Houston Rockets back to back, and he's a back to back finals MVP. He was the most valuable player in 1994. He's a 12-time NBA All Star, 6-time All NBA first team. He's 2-time Defensive Player of the Year in 93 and 94, 5-time All Defensive First, 4-time All Defensive Second. And he actually, a lot of people my age, I don't think realize this. When he came into the league in his second season, right, he led his team to the NBA Finals. That's how good he was out of the gate. A lot of people just remember the 2 finals runs he had in the 90s. They forgot about the one in 86. So that's Hakeem. Next on my list, I have Rasheed Wallace, one of my favorite players growing up. And a lot of people didn't even realize he was Muslim, but he was born in Pennsylvania. He grew up in Philadelphia. He went to high school in Philadelphia, and he was actually drafted by the Washington Bullets in the first round, and he was the 4th pick. And he only played 1 season there before eventually going to Portland the next year. He was traded to the Portland Trail Blazers for Harvey Grant and Rod Strickland. Now, from 96-97 season up until 2002-2003, he would play with the Portland Trail Blazers. And they were known as the Jailblazers during this time because of how many technicals they would get and how many scandals they would have off the court, how their players would get arrested, stuff like that. But Rasheed Wallace, I can't really say he was criminal. Like, I wasn't implying that when I said him. I was talking about other players on the team, but he was definitely a very dirty player. Some of his nicknames were Dirty 30 because his jersey number was number 30. And Rasheed, to me, was one of the first stretch bigs. I'm not saying the first stretch big, but one of the. He had a great outside shot. And the name Rasheed actually means rightly guided in Arabic. And he's a 2004 NBA champion, 4-time All-Star. He played for quite a while. I don't think people realize that. His last season was in the 2012-13 season with the Knicks. He was 38 years old. He played with the Boston Celtics, too. He had the finals run in 2010 with them. Lost in the finals. He lost in the finals in 2005 with the Pistons. But his 2004 Pistons team upset the Los Angeles Lakers. They defeated Shaquille O'Neal and the Los Angeles Lakers. And Rasheed Wallace, to me, I wish they put him in 2K. He'd be great on that 2004 Pistons team in the game. They don't have the rights to him in the game. And off the court, Wallace has been one of the biggest voices and helping hands in the Flint water crisis. And he's involved in a lot of social activism. And his nephew, Goddard Welton, is a professional basketball player. Wallace roots for his home team, the Philadelphia Flyers of the NHL, and the Phillies of the MLB. He's a big-time Philly guy, big-time East Coast fan. And the reason why I bring that up is here's a story I don't think a lot of people know. He's a big-time East Coast hip-hop head, right? And during the late 90s, I think a lot of people know about the East Coast, West Coast rap feud that was going on. And Rasheed Wallace, this is really interesting. Rasheed Wallace kind of got involved in that because during an interview, he dissed E40 because they were asking him, what rappers do you think are trash, so to speak. I don't remember who was interviewing him this, But anyways, he gave E40 like a 0 out of 10. And so E40 actually dissed Rasheed Wallace. Kind of crazy. thinking about a basketball player being dissed by a rapper, But he was a big Wu-Tang Clan fan, Biggie Smalls fan, big everything East Coast. Um, and actually, after he got out of the NBA, he tried coaching. In July 2013, Wallace joined the Detroit Pistons staff as an assistant coach after signing a 2-year contract with the team. He worked for the Pistons for the 2013-14 season, but was not rehired to the staff for a new coach, Stan Van Gundy, following that season. And on March 8th, 2019, Wallace was introduced as the new boys varsity basketball head coach of the Charles E. Jordan High School in Durham, North Carolina. And actually, on August 18, 2021, Wallace agreed to become an assistant coach at Memphis on Penny Hardaway's staff roster. He joined his former head coach in Detroit and Hall of Fame coach Larry Brown on the Tigers. On January 13, 2022, it was announced that Wallace would not serve as an in-person role, but would finish the season working remotely. So that's Rasheed Wallace. Now, this next addition to this list, I'm kind of cheating because I'm putting two players in one. Kyrie Irving and Jaylen Brown. Both of them converted to Islam. And Jaylen Brown isn't as open about his story when he became Muslim. From what I've heard, it was in college. And Kyrie, we all know, recently just announced he became Muslim. And let's talk about them. They played on the Boston Celtics together. They observed Ramadan together. And they also had another Muslim player on that team, Enes Kanter. Well, today known as Enes Freedom. So Kyrie Irving, he was drafted to the Cleveland Cavaliers in 2011. He was the first pick of that draft, and he was born actually in Australia because his father played in Melbourne, Australia. And he was I would consider him a generational talent in that his ball handling, his outside shooting. A lot of people talk about Steph Curry, and they should, because Curry is the greatest shooter of all time. But Irving isn't as far behind as people make it out to be. He had a 50, 40, 90 season in the 2020-21 season. He's a career 47% field goal shooter and 39% three, and 88% free throw shooting. He's currently on the Brooklyn Nets. He didn't have the best season because he didn't play very many games. He played 29 games. And it's looking like he's going to be traded at some point. But he's a 7-time All-Star, 2016 NBA champion, which in the Game 7 of the 2016 NBA Finals, he hit the most, in my opinion, one of the most clutch shots I've ever seen. Late in the game, he had a three-pointer to put them up. And he's the game winner, so to speak. LeBron, it was a team effort. LeBron had the chase down block. Kyrie had the game winner. But he's the 2014 All-Star Game MVP, 2012 Rookie of the Year as well. He's 3-time All-NBA, and I think he's the biggest snub from the NBA 75 list. I think it should have been him instead of Dame Lillard, but that's just my opinion. And that's Kyrie Irving. Now, Jaylen Brown, to me, his ceiling is very high. He's a lot younger. He's only been in the league since 2016. He's 25 right now. He's playing for the Boston Celtics, and they're coming off of a finals run. They had a pretty good finals run where they made it all the way to the finals and lost to the Golden State Warriors. But to me, the sky's the limit with this guy. He's a one-time All-Star. That's all he has on his resume, but he's great. He's a great defender, a great shooter. And to me, in my opinion, right, I know a lot of people are going to disagree with this. He carried the Celtics in a lot of ways Tatum didn't. Tatum had a lot of games where he was going cold. But Brown showed up every night at the finals, you know? So that's Jaylen Brown and Kyrie Irving. I put them together because they were teammates. So that's their story. So that was a couple of the more well-known Muslim players in NBA history. Obviously, I didn't cover every single one. I couldn't really do that. Too many that have played, I can't cover them all. So I hope everybody has a good Eid. I hope you spend time with your family, and I hope you get out and help the less fortunate during these crazy times. Part of being a Muslim to me means, especially during Eid, helping the less fortunate. I don't mean like you don't help people year round, but this is the time for giving. This is the time for getting out there, getting active in your community, helping the less fortunate. And don't just do it for brownie points, taking pictures of yourself while you're helping others. As you see Shaq helping people, I covered in this video how he's very generous. You don't see him taking pictures of himself as he helps people. Get out there and commit your time if you don't have the resources to help others. Sometimes even just going out there and listening to somebody is a charity in itself. Because sometimes people just need someone to listen to them. And especially in these times, it's tough everywhere. And I hope you get out there and spend time with family. Eid Mubarak, everyone. Assalamu alaikum.